Okay. Let's wait for this to boot up. Excellent. Here we go. All right, I think we're good. Yes, indeedio, I believe we're good. I just said yes, indeedio. Make sure I'm not on mute. Sound test. Gotcha. Alright. After an unfortunate incident the other day, we had to close down the Spoilercast because my throat was getting fucked because the humidity was so bad. Today, it's much better. Last few days was not great. I've had a rough week for a myriad of reasons. Not just that. But, yeah, we're gonna attempt and endeavor this time to cover the next 3 arcs, and then in the last part, which I intend to do later today, we will cover the final 3 arcs. So, first up, let's start with Utaba's Palace. Pyramid Arc. Yeah, get up there. Casually remind myself some of the other things that we talked about on this one. Yes, so I want to put and what else can we shove on here? This is looking a little barren. Yes, actually. Hilariously, I didn't have Hawaii on here, so let's very quickly brush Hawaii into the list. There's not a whole lot to talk about. It's mainly going to be Kasumi. Oh, I can't bring that in there just yet. What else? What else can I stuff with? Might have to wing it a little on some of these other spots. Yeah, unfortunately that is kind of the extent of what I'll be putting up there for now. So let's talk about why Futaba's Palace is my favorite arc. Or at least, has been until recently. Sure doesn't sound like my throat's better. But it is. It still might jump up on me a little bit, but at least the humidity isn't gonna fuck it completely. So yeah, what's up with Futaba's Palace? Why does it hit me so hard every time? Who's messaging me? Who is messaging me? I don't have time for this right now. Oh my god. What did I tell? What did I say about no noise? Anyways, so... God, I love the aesthetics of Pyramid so much. So... I love this palace because, A, it is wildly different than any of the ones that come before it. It is, it's an exploration into someone's own degrading sanity that I really appreciate. It's a Persona 4 dungeon, which is interesting because, as I said in my original Spoilercast, I played before after this, so that was interesting. But it's absolutely a Persona 4 dungeon. You go in and you go in to conquer someone's demons as opposed to ridding an evil from the world, which is different than anything that's been in the game that up till that point. So it's really important for it to be like that. But also, the character of Futaba means an enormous amount to me. Outside of all the gremlin-y stuff, that's just fun, mainly because. And here's where I get raw. I'm not gonna say up to how recently, because that's a little too personal. But a fair portion more of my life than I would like to admit, I have been stuck inside. And I do mean stuck, as in not a whole lot I was able to do about it. I've wanted to change that during that time, and there's not been a whole lot that I could do. I've been kind of stuck by outside forces that are beyond my control. And that's why when I saw this arc and this character who is stuck inside because of her own demons and an external force, that struck far too much of a chord for me to handle, and I immediately began to unravel, and my emotions came out. I had an enormous fit of crying sessions for this arc the first time I touched it, and it's the main reason why it's like my favorite part of the series. It is so fantastic. It's funny. I would say it's probably my favorite part of the series until this game, and it's not even... It's funny. The new part that I like the most is different from this. It doesn't strike a personal chord with me, but in terms of execution, there is something very magical to it. However, this is always going to hit me really hard. A character that is forced inside, cannot really do a lot about it, even to the best of their abilities. They want to change it, but they can't. And that meant an enormous amount to me. This character is like gospel to me. I relate to her so hyper specifically that I get a little weirded out, and like it's hard for me to deal when, you know, people write her off as a gremlin, you know, because I think there's way more going on there than just that. I know a lot of people like to make weird judgment calls about, like, her age versus the rest of the cast, as if they're not all 15, which is always really bizarre whenever I see it. She's only like 7 months younger than the protagonist, I believe, if I recall that date correctly, because their birthdays are like out there. So yeah, it's something weird like that. People get really weird about it for some reason, and I try to kind of stay away from it. But I do get pretty protective of this character a lot of the time, because this character spoke to me in a very specific way that no other character really ever has, because I've never seen a story take this tact with a character like this, and I'm super emotionally invested, and there's not a whole lot that I was able to do to confront that for a long time. This shit meant a whole lot to me. And yeah, like, gosh, that was a whole lot. That was a whole lot to say, and man, let me just do a sound check again.
It's stuffy. Yes, I know.
Oh.
But it still beats opening the windows to the hot desert air.
What's a good... Yeah, all the cutscenes are a little too far in. That's unfortunate. But you get the point. If you're here, you understand why this shit hit me. Like, it didn't just hit me, it hit me like a truck in a way that nothing ever probably will again. So yeah, obviously there are very different circumstances in her life that led her to being in that situation than there were in mine, but they were uncomfortably similar in specific ways that I will not be getting into on camera, because fuck that. I've given you as much as you need to know in order to get why this shit was super important to me. Next up on the list is Megid as an unseen force. So that's another aspect of this month that I always really appreciated, is that, again, they, after 3 months of go up to Guy, fight him, they, like, took great efforts to have the next arc be wildly different. And the idea of an anonymous internet hacking organization that can't really be defeated by normal means is a great escalation, in that you cannot target it the same way that you have the other characters. It's a little bit... It's the kind of thing where, like, obviously other arcs after it go back to that, but they all tend to tackle it, with the exception of Arc 5, but they kind of have to not do it in different ways for specific reasons. They tackle them in different ways, and there are different elements of the plot that keep things interesting from here on out. But at the end of the day, like, Futaba's is wildly different from the others, and it makes it really interesting. It keeps it from getting stale in a way that I really appreciate. Oh, it's funny. That one actually lets me in. And they do a really good job of making sure that it feels natural. And yeah, Mentioned as an Unseen Force is a super interesting aspect of this that I really appreciate. Here's an interesting diversion. Summer Food Festival / Kasumi's sister is what I have written up next, which is interesting because, yeah, the timing of the... It's interesting. Futaba's arc is also interesting because this is kind of a minor thing, but, like, the scheduling of the summer demands that the arc after this really start in September, so there's a lot of... I don't even want to say filler, because I don't think that's accurate. There's a lot of, like... There's a lot of downtime during this arc that isn't in some of the others, in a way that I really appreciate. Hey, the new semester outfit, that's really good. I'll throw this on in a bit. So the Summer Food Festival is a... Oh, I'm trying to blow something off of my phone, but it's just it's a piece of text that's hanging on the edge of the screen. It's not a speck of dust. Anyways, the Summer Food Festival is a really nice event that they've added, in which Ryuji and Yusuke and the protagonist, Ren, head to a food festival to eat, because, you know, Yusuke's starved. And it's a really nice little event that I appreciate, that kind of, like, breaks up the pacing a little more. And also, it's really an excuse to meet up with Kasumi again outside of the stadium to get a big plot dump about Kasumi, which is that she reveals to us that shortly before she transferred to this school. I forget the exact time frame at this particular moment, so you'll have to forgive me on that. My brain is saying 3 months, but it might be longer than that. I know it's within a year. Shortly before the year starts, and she ends up at the school, there is a tragic accident that leads her twin sister, Sumire, to be horribly murdered. Not murdered, manslaughtered in a car accident that appears to be no one's fault, but she is dead, and she's gone, and there's nothing anybody can do to bring her back, and it sucks. And it hits you like a truck, and it's the first moment in the game, chronologically, I would say, where you get a piece of who she is, where it's like, oh, okay, now I kind of get what's going on here. At the same time, like, she, you know, like, there's something to her backstory, and now I kind of get what that is. There's a whole lot more that is being unsaid, but we'll come back to that a little later. But the school, the summer food festivals are really nice. Next up, I have written something that, interestingly enough, I didn't put in the Connoisseur arc, but I probably could have, which is Showtime Attacks. Showtime Attacks are a wonderful addition to this game. I'm going to show off the non-third semester ones real quick, and I'll show those off once I get there. Each of them is a movie parody in some way, shape, or form, such as Gun with the Wind.
A gift as beautiful as you.
Wish I could get some music in here, but that's fine. Jesus Christ. These all have different variations on bosses, which I really appreciate.
Now that's style.
Like the one for this one, for Mad Moxie, is really nice.
Make way for the fist of the Phantom.
In the variants of these that we see in these short soundless clips, the dialogue is fixed, I believe, but in-game the dialogue switches every time, so you're always kind of getting a new experience with these, which I really appreciate, because otherwise they could very easily feel like I'm just watching the same thing again. Inglorious Beef Bowls, which is the one you get from the Summer Food Festival.
Starving. Allow me.
Oh
Some
yeah!
sauce.
God.
Touch of bread. Bon appetit.
Oh man, just what I want. Get out of my face! And chew on this! Exchange, right? Holy crap, this is good.
Kabuki Kid.
Come. We must bring grace to this battle.
The sharper the thorn.
Beauty is deadly.
By the way, I love these slow transformations
Enchanted.
over the last few years of the devs realizing that Yusuke can just be Virgil like that, to the point where now in Persona 5 Scramble, he's just Virgil. He has a fucking judgment cut. It's ridiculous. I love it. Drive Hard. This one's really good.
We bid you adieu. Let's do this, Noir. Enjoy. Go out with the bang. Mona-chan, hang on.
The last one is, the last main game one, I think, is my favorite one. PTE Throwdown. This is so
Pardon
fucking
me.
good.
Bring it. Showtime.
It's my favorite for one line, which I believe is used in this version. And here it comes.
Noir, leave it to me. Ready, set.
Double death blow! Oh, it's so good. We'll check out the last two later, as they do have spoilers, although you can totally see one of them on the screen already. But that's fine. So yeah, Showtime Attacks are a really great addition that punctuate battles in a new way, that are additive to all-out attacks, that I really appreciate. I like how easy it is to like get them if you just want to see one, in that the trigger activations are fairly generous. They mistranslated one of them. They said in the in-game tooltip, it said when Joker gets baton passed to, you can get a Showtime attack. That's false. The only ones that work like that are the two that Joker is actually involved in. But the trigger requirements are when Joker's health is low, when a party member's health is below 50%, like just like someone in the party's health is below 50%, and when an enemy is about to die. And what I really appreciate about that last one is that you can just guard on every turn if you really just want to see one, which is really nice. They're fairly easy to get, so you can just see them if you want to see them, and I often want to see them because they punctuate fights in a nice way. So yeah, I think those are a wonderful addition. Hifumi and Yoshida. So, oh my god, stop! Anyways. So Hifumi, we will talk about quickly. Hifumi is, aside from just being one of the most important characters in the game because she lets you switch party members in battle, what do you guys have to say about the church?
What are your thoughts? For real?
Anyways, but even outside of that, like, she has a fairly interesting story where, you know, you meet up with her, she teaches you the ways of shogi, she gives you a lot of really useful moves, and, like, tricky uses of specific moves, the ability to leave, to decrease turn delay so you can run away from every fight instantly, to the ability to escape after being ambushed, all sorts of really neat stuff. Obviously, the meat and potatoes of her is getting fucking party switch, but other than that, she's really fun. It's funny, I've seen a lot of people date her. I've yet to do it. I'll probably do that at some point. She's really awesome. I like her a lot. It's a way better character than Marie for Eden Regal, let's put it that way. Even though she has less lines. But boy, do they treat her way better. Yeah, Hifumi's great. Hifumi's great. Again, not as much to say about certain things, just because it's good. Toranosuke Yoshida. No good Toro. Oh, and he's here too. Awesome. So, get a good angle on this. That'll do. So, Yoshida is interesting in that he's one of the two links in the game that don't require a Arcana or even the correct answers to proceed. Every single time you rank him up, he will rank up, and that's because he's only available once a week, with the exception of a couple certain days throughout the calendar. So they know that if you did have to do it like that, you'd be fucked with the way they wanted to do it, where his speeches were on specific days. He has a nice little story arc where, you know, you deal with, like, the politics of the world, which is interesting. You deal with the politics of Japan and the diet building, and it's funny, because all of that actually eventually leads somewhere in the main plot. But, oh god, oh yeah, get away from him. Stop making eyes at him like that. And it's funny how well it dovetails into main plot stuff later on, but, like, I really appreciate how his story weaves throughout everything. The idea of a politician who's in with the thieves and likes what they're doing, he likes societal reform, he thinks it's a good thing, and teaching him about how to, like, do speeches properly and, like, speak better, it's a fun dynamic that I really appreciate, that I think helps shine a little more light on Ren's personality. Yeah, it's good shit. It's good shit. Asian Bernie's a good dude. I like him. Palace editions for Palace 4. So Palace 4, generally light, but they've added some nice grapple points. The will seeds make a big difference. A theme of a lot of the palaces is readability in terms of changes. Like, a lot of the old puzzles and bits that were communicated poorly are just generally communicated well now. And I know that because I've talked to people who, like, hey, you didn't play the original, or sorry, yeah, you didn't play the original, you're playing this one for the first time, how did you feel about, like, going through this palace? Were you stumped on any of this stuff? No, it was fairly easy. Did you have trouble with this thing? No, that was really clear. Stuff like that. Like, people generally have a much easier time with it. This has never been more true than Spaceport Palace, which used to be dog shit. And I think, and I get why some people are still up on it, but they've really trimmed the fat. But we'll get to that. But the Futaba's Palace generally has a lot of things in it that were a little hard to read, but at the end of the day, it was still my favorite palace for a lot of reasons. Design-wise was included. But they've done things like, there's one puzzle room that used to be, do the same puzzle twice in a row and then you get to leave. Now it's, do the puzzle once, you can leave. Do it twice, get a will see. Stuff like that, that I really appreciate. It's like building additional ideas on top of an area that was already there. Stuff that like that is really slick, and I really appreciate that. The overall additions are mainly pacing tightening, which is good shit, and I really appreciate that. Futaba's Palace is still really, really good. Now, what I've written here is emotional boss expansion. Now, what do I mean by that? Every boss up until now has had an entirely new phase to them. Kamoshida has Bunny Girl, Shiho, and Mishima. Madarame has the clones. Kanashiro has his goons that he calls out that you have to put to sleep. And they didn't do that with this boss. They didn't add another phase. They elongated the boss and did something that maybe other people will have an issue with, but I couldn't have wished for a better thing in my wildest dreams than what they did with this. So basically what they did was, rather than, I really appreciate the sand down there, rather than making another phase for the boss, the whole boss is structured differently. Not in terms of gameplay, but in terms of thematics and how the fight progresses. Well, the fight used to very much be, hey, beat the shit out of Futaba's mom's ghost, right? Who is haunting her brain and she can't get it out, right? She's haunted by the thoughts of her mother, and she doesn't know how to deal with it. It used to just be, fight the boss. There were a couple lines here or there, but really it was just fight the boss. They have now added basically an entire character arc for Futaba in that fight, where they've built out lines that match to specific moments, and the fight is less of a fight and more of just building on the emotion of the scene. And for a part of the game I find to be incredibly emotional, wow, do I prefer that over just another phase. Like, it's a level of thoughtfulness that I wouldn't have expected that really took me by surprise in terms of, like, how they expanded that fight. The fight itself is largely the same, but there's more to it. There's more to chew on emotionally, and that is something I really was surprised by. And gosh, I just really was not prepared for them to just be like, yep, now the boss is longer and it's more about emotional impact. I was pretty stunned by that. I could not have predicted that. So yeah, enormous hats off on that one. Yeah. Then we'll briefly talk about Hawaii. I should have put on Futaba's other costume when I did that, but now it's gonna come off when I do that. Oh well. What am I doing? I'm jumping the gun. What do they have to say about this? I've never actually seen anyone show up on the Hawaii spot before.
Wow.
So yeah, the Hawaii trip was obviously in the original game, but it's a very nice piece of the puzzle. You know, they go up to Hawaii. Actually, I could show those scenes. Sorry, I talked all about Futaba's journey and all sorts of stuff without actually putting it on screen, even though it means a lot to me to be on screen. So let's throw some of that up, and to also give, you know, my throat a little break. I'm all jumbled because I meant to do this all in one day, and I obviously didn't. So my flow's disrupted. But that's fine.
Is it a shadow? No. Then
It's not Futaba.
don't tell me. This is insane!
If it's not a shadow, then what is it?
It's a cognition! A monster that Futaba's cognition created! How can that be?
Hey, look out! Here it comes!
What is that? Huh? Whoa!
Contract. I am thou. Thou art I. The forbidden wisdom has been revealed. No mysteries. No illusions shall deceive you any longer.
Futaba!
Yeah, by the way, the element of her persona being
Help me!
not so I always really like it when the personas in general are not just a big thing that sits behind them, like a dude, right? Like Koromaru's is it's a dog because he's a dog. Let me turn around and look at my cards of all the characters on the wall from Q2 so I can remind myself who's who and who's got what. I guess this is it's kinda like a big thing, but it's different still, so I appreciate it. Rise's is different to a degree because it kind of like sits over her like a visor. Yeah, and Futaba's is like it's a mobile base, which is always really interesting to me. It's a nice different aesthetic that I really appreciate. And yeah, another one which is funny because it's in Scramble is Sophia. Her persona isn't like a physical being. I think it might grow to one, but it's basically like these four obelisks that hover behind her. They're very interesting. I didn't talk about the beach trip, which is hilarious. So we go to the beach to like get her to open up and out of her shell. There's the whole week where she opens up and they have to try and figure out how to make her feel like she's okay to go outside and belong in society is a really great sequence. The hilarious thing is that it didn't used to be voiced, which really sucked the life out of it. And now it is fully voiced, which, God, it just helps so much for an important series of scenes. What a doof.
Got a better opinion of me now? What? Cat got your tongue? Come on.
Are we missing?
Mission accomplished.
What?
This is perfect! There's nothing perfect about that. Stay still for a second. You'll be just fine.
Some of the background voices made me think someone was shouting outside my room. Jesus Christ. Oh, that's funny. I got really freaked out. I feel like it might be my headset, because I'm usually using like smaller earbuds when I play, like when I actually play, as opposed to this really good headset that lets me hear more, because I prefer to use it when I'm talking to people. And so I'll hear sounds that I never heard before, and that scared the shit out of me. That's funny. But anyways, Hawaii. I'm always going to question the Morgana like eyewear. I'm very fascinated by that, the existence of such a thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our initial descent into Hawaii.
So what I think is fun about Hawaii is that obviously it gives you a chance to meet Haru a little early. And it did that in the original game, but it is a little better for it now because there's an extra scene. There's an extra scene now with Kawakami like trying to look hot in the mirror, and Haru walks in on her. She's like, "Oh fuck!"
So excited! I have no idea though.
Doesn't fucking speak English.
Hawaii! I love it. The tropical air.
Hi, aloha. You can find your buses that way.
Damn, you speak Japanese? Whoa, I see it! The diamond thing! Oh man! The ocean is so blue!
So yeah, you go on the trip. There's a few extra scenes throughout it. Yusuke shows up because his school trip was blown the fuck up and ejected to Hawaii. But the big addition to Hawaii this time is that Kasumi shows up in the gift shop before everybody leaves, and that's when she officially meets most of the cast. And this is something that basically I want to talk about this scene, even though it seems like a small scene, because it introduces one of her most adorable moments, which is sneaking up on the protagonist, and trying to scare him. But also, it's because it's the first moment that they meet. There's an element of like, okay, the problem in Persona 4 Golden, yes, I'm going there, with Marie, is that throughout her, oh gosh, wait, I really want to know what those two have to say about that. See, even talking about Marie makes me want to jump ship.
Huh?
That's funny. Like Marie shows up, and the cast meets her pretty quickly through her S-Link, which is available in almost its entirety the minute that the game starts, so you can kind of blaze through it. Well, okay, no, not in its entirety because certain characters need to show up, but the minute the cast meets her, it just comes across so forced because, like, everyone just sort of walks in from out frame like it's a comedy show, like it's a sitcom, to just be like, "What's up? Oh, who are you? You're awesome," and it just feels so forced. Whereas you wait until a story event in a certain month to meet up with Kasumi, where the cast meets her, and it feels very natural. It feels like it was always there. And that's the kind of the difference between Kasumi and Marie, is Marie feels like she wasn't always there, and Kasumi absolutely feels like she was always there. And it's such a great moment, and it helps you get to know her just a little more as the months go on, which is very important because the next month will be very big for her. Speaking of the next month, oh boy, oh boy, okay. Let's get in there. Let's see. Yes, actually. That should be there because this will become relevant this month. What else? Yes, actually. What are the orange slots? Like, I'm trying to remember what goes there. Yeah, just these big ones. And spoilers. I mean, you're in a spoiler cast, so that's your fault, but, you know. No, that won't fit. Oh, Goemon's still up there. That's funny. Alright. We have now entered Spaceport Palace. A palace that should have always been... Yeah, I'm just gonna leave her up there for now. A palace that should have always been one of my favorites on aesthetics alone, and as I'm sure many people are aware and agree with... Oh wow, that's super neat. Oh, that's a great touch. As I'm sure a lot of people are aware, isn't, or at least wasn't. So like... Where do I fucking start with Spaceport Arc? Well, let's refer to the list. Wyatt's got problems. Holy shit. Okay, here we go. Hilariously, I put that differently than Morgana and Ryuji Troubles, even though it's kind of the same topic. But I guess we'll see what we can do. So, what's the issue with this arc? Why is it ultimately the one that has the most issues compared to anything else, and why it's pretty commonly agreed as the part of the game that just sort of drops the ball? Which is unfortunate because other parts of P5 Media have actually fixed it, which is why I was so confident they would fix it here, and they didn't. If anything, they made it more embarrassing in a certain way, but not because of the arc being worse. There are actually improvements. There are genuinely big improvements. But, you know, problems. So, to start, Haru. I love her. She's great. She was always my number 2 in the original. There's nothing really wrong with her arc, I would say. In fact, I would say her arc is the most genuinely well thought out part of this whole thing. I didn't realize all these were on the top floor now. So Haru is interesting. Haru is like what has one of my favorite archetypes in the game, which is she is floofy, soft, demure, sweet, will fucking murder you with an axe. That's probably my favorite part of Haru, is that she is always this very sweet, like, ah, I like gardening, and I just like to make people happy, and I have a grenade launcher! But she does it in the most sweetest voice. And that is a archetype I'm a big fan of. Like, hell, that is exemplified so well in her persona, which is this, like, regal, fucking, like, this lady of fine culture and esteem who has a fucking rocket launcher set up, built into her gut. Like, Milady is wonderful. Or as she pronounces it, Milady, which is interesting. Yeah, God. Haru is the only part of this month that really works for me. I think her storyline itself is a big hit. The thing that happens around it is unfortunately not a hit. And that would be... Did I flip my phone upside down? What's going on here? Oh, I guess I did. That would be Ryuji and Morgana. Sorry, what does the sign say? Oh! I didn't realize that the sign let you view the thing that was above. That's actually really neat. But yeah, so you get to this part of the game, and Ryuji and Morgana's anger has been a little more understated in Royal, but it's still there, you know, it's not gone or anything. They softened Ryuji up a lot throughout this game, this version of the game rather, in a way that I really appreciate. But, there comes to a point where Morgana has a justifiable, like, moment of, frustration. They don't need him anymore. And that comes out, it begins to come out for very valid reasons, right? Like, when the team starts, Morgana is the information analysis guy. He studies enemy tactics, he relays information to people, he makes sure that everybody knows what they need to know about enemies as they come up. And he also surveys the environment and makes sure that things can go smoothly for the team. Once Makoto shows up, part of that job is taken from him. But he's okay with it, because he's like, hey, I can still do like navigation and stuff like that, so that's fine. Then Futaba shows up. Suddenly, all of Morgana's duties are gone. And that hits pretty well. Like, that part of it I have no issue with. That part has always been the part of it that justifiably makes the most sense to me. The problem arises when certain characters are being a little rude to Morgana about it. All of the cast is kind of ignoring him, right? And it's very understandable why Morgana feels, like, spited, honestly. Like, he feels like he's kind of being forgotten about, and that sucks. And then Ryuji says something a little careless, but it's not that bad yet, right? And you move through the storyline, and here's the thing: I think Royal does actually save this in a couple ways. It does it through the Thieves' Den hilariously, and yes, I do count that as like saving it, simply because it's still on the disc. It's on the disc, it's in the game, who cares, it counts. Right? That's ultimately that's the tact you have to take, otherwise you're being willfully ignorant. I wish some of that could have made it into the main story, but you know, you can't have everything. You know. But I still appreciate the attempt to try and patch some of the holes. So Ryuji says something that is careless, and here's the thing, I had a much bigger issue with it the first time. And then Ryuji basically says something to the lines of like, hey, look, listen, whether you're useless or not, it's fine. We still want you here. Taken completely wrong. He's trying to say the right thing, but it comes off so bad, and it just hits in the wrong way so quickly that it's almost embarrassing. Let me remind myself what cutscenes are in here for the Okumura arc. Ah, got it. Okay. So then, you know, we roll through some memento strips. There's some days where Ren is very upset that his cat is gone, which to me is like hilarious and wonderful. The degree to how emotional he is when you try and interact with anything in his room. He's like, I miss my cat. I miss my cat. I don't know how to do anything without my cat. It's really fun. Even though it takes away a couple days, but who cares? The game adds like 70 days worth of extra things to do anyways, so who cares? Not a big deal. There's still enough to get, like, to easily get every character maxed out on a non-New Game Plus save, which was a lot more hard without a guide back then. So Morgana has, you know, a spat with the crew, and it's just not handled that well. It's really unfortunate that they play it out the way that they do, because it just comes across so willfully. Now, like I said before, that's not the right Morgana. Oh God! Spoilers. It comes off just rough. You know, Morgana, I think. I said it before in the first part. I like Morgana more than I like Teddy, like quite a bit. I think he's a better mascot overall. Here's the thing, genuinely, and I mean this. Even as frustrating as this part in Okumura's Palace is with Morgana and Ryuji, God, I will take it any day over most of what Teddy does in P4, to be honest. Hot take. So yeah, that's kind of my thing, is like, this part's not great. This is the one part that everybody agrees, like, and it's the one part of the game I still think is like, eh. I said that most of my biggest issues have been solved, and that's kind of true, because again, there is some Thieves' Den dialogue that does wrap this up in a way that I find satisfying. Mainly, the implication, and it's funny because it's not inferring things that weren't in the game. It's stuff that was always there, but they call attention to the fact that when Haru is being assaulted by her fiance, and he kicks Morgana across the alleyway, Ryuji is, despite being a shit to Morgana for a bit, goes out of his way to try and save Morgana without a thought. Even though he's supposedly pissed at him, he goes out of his way in a moment of real to save this cat, because fucking Ryuji does give a shit. He's being a shit, but his real feelings are very clear. He cares about this cat. And that, when they call it out in the Thieves' Den, really hit me, and I went, okay, you know what? That does make this a lot better to me. Again, I wish some of that could have made it back into the dialogue, but at the end of the day, it is there. It's not like I read the dialogue in the Thieves' Den and went, oh, I can infer that. No, it's like, you watch the scene. He very clearly goes out of his way to do something about it before anybody else does, right? So yeah, at the end of the day, there are things here that make me appreciate Morgana and Ryuji spat more, but it is definitely a low point. It's definitely the lowest point in the game now, which is unfortunate, but I do think they have mitigated it to a certain extent. The only thing that really bugs me about it is that, hilariously, the terrible Persona 5 anime that I like, because I like this game, shocker, but it's not a good show. It's not. It's objectively not good. I hate using the word objectively because people have forgotten what it means. But, yeah, it's... I'll say subjectively. It's subjectively not a good show. But one of the things they did really right was they switched around some of the dialogue in the sequence, and here's the funny thing. First time I saw this in the anime, with Ryuji and Morgana making up, I cried. I didn't cry for the original version. Sometimes I cry for the original version now, because I think about what they said in the anime, and I think they did a much better job of it there, which is actually what made me so sure they were going to mess with it in Royal, but they didn't. But hey, a great version of that scene exists. I'll forever sub it in my brain. Whatever. Now, moving on to Haru. Her awakening happens pseudo off-screen. Her relationship with Morgana is interesting, and I do appreciate the fun flair that they add there. It's funny how they managed to take... I forget the exact explanation right now. There is a reason why she's able to awaken to her, like, Phantom Thief attire before she's awoken to, like, her persona, or at least fully. I forget the exact explanation right now, but, yeah, basically Haru has her real awakening in the palace about her dad, because her dad is a horrible, shitty person.
Now, why don't you come?
Who views his daughter as basically just meat that he can sell off. And yeah, it's not great.
I'll play with you until I get bored. A high school villain's what it's around.
So vulgar. No! Haru's persona won't stand a chance against that. Don't worry. She hadn't awakened to her real power. That's all.
How dare you?
I see you finally made up your mind, my dear fated princess.
God, Xanthi kills this.
Stem from betrayal.
Xanthi is such a great VA.
Now, then you must not err. Now tell me, who shall you betray?
My heart has been set. You should know.
Yes, that gaze. I can finally display my
Melody's
true
voice is so pitch perfect.
Thou art I. Let us adorn your departure into freedom with a beautiful betrayal.
Jeez!
Farewell, dear father. I am no longer your subservient puppet.
Then so be it. You're worthless.
Darth Vader looking motherfucker.
Deal with them how you wish.
You poor thing. I'll toy with you until you break.
I don't expect you to come to reason at all.
Uh-huh. Should have just told you this from the start, asshat.
We are the Phantom Thieves, here to take your bride.
So yeah, like, all that stuff is well and good. Haru awakens in a really neat way. I really appreciate, like... I do, again, this arc has issues. Haru is not one of them. I love the way that her stuff starts. I think the way that she kind of meets up with Morgana, I think that stuff I have a lot of fun with. So yeah, you know, I ultimately I think that there's some really good stuff here. Now, hilariously, while this is definitely the weakest arc in the game, I have it written down in here as my next note. Kasumi accidentally steals the show. Because, on October 3rd, a day that I won't forget because it's a big one in the calendar now, regardless of whether or not you've gone to the palace, hilariously, I accidentally went to the palace early on my first playthrough, and I realized I didn't want to go gun it in one day, so I loaded a save and I did all my stuff until the last possible day, which meant that I saw this first, before I got to Haru's Awakening. So basically, you get to October 3rd, and Kasumi's been rolling through the whole year. People have been getting on her case. Oh, the fucking honor student, whatever, special treatment. What a fucking bitch. Oh, she's awful. I hate her. And, like, she has been shrugging it off, but she's kind of reaching a boiling point. And it hits really hard when the school sends a representative to basically be like, hey, you need to start attaining result. You in the I want to say the track meet, but it's not a track and field meet. It's the gymnastics meet. You attained 3rd place, and fuck you, 3rd place isn't good enough. You're supposed to represent how great our school is, yada yada yada. And Maruki is there trying to kind of soften the blow, like, hey, if you keep telling her this, it's going to, like, really fuck with her sense of self-worth, and that's not good. You really need to stop doing that. And they're like, oh, my apologies. I merely meant to make her feel better. And fucking we build to her outside of the vice principal's office, who is talking about how, like, oh, by the way, I never mentioned the principal died a few weeks back. Whatever, it's not that important, surprisingly. You get a scene with the vice principal, which I actually really appreciate for a couple reasons, because the vice principal doesn't really have a lot of scenes after the principal dies. So having this big scene where he's just like, listen, we're doing our best for this girl, but you know, that kind of thing. Where it's, I actually really appreciate getting to see him a little more, because like getting a sense of the school's power structure after that death it's a good thing, you know. Quick drink. And Kasumi is very distraught because she hears something to the effect of, wow, you know, her and her sister were supposed to be these star students, and now we've only got one, and, well, the one that's left ain't doing us any good, so whatever. And she overhears that, and it breaks her. She doesn't know what she's supposed to do. It feels like it's tearing her heart out. She's losing it. So she runs away from the school, ends up at the stadium that's being built. Which there have been a couple hints that the stadium was meant to be something else throughout the game, but, you know, things are starting to come to a head with her storyline. And she calls to the protagonist to, like, hey, I'm out here, I really need someone to talk to, yada yada yada. So you go to meet her, and along the way,
beginning navigation.
you get a subtle, well,
Hey, is that...
you get a not so subtle introduction to what is now to me the best part of the game, like hands down. I did not expect to see this place anywhere close to the part of the game that I saw it in. I didn't expect to see even a hint of this place. And, you know, so you break in, she ends up inside via, you know, because some external circumstances. And you finally meet up with her, and she meets what appears to be the ghost of her sister. Interestingly, which is very interesting, because why does this random palace that we've never seen before have an image of her sister in it? Why would something like that be there? The palace is supposed to reflect the thoughts and, like, overall ideas of the person that you're infiltrating, right? So, and we don't know whose palace it is. So what's the deal here? Why is there a connection between these two characters? And the shadow basically tells her, she sees her sister who's basically begging her, she sees her sister Sumire, who's basically begging her, hey, like, please do something. There's some cryptic words that are hinting at things that I won't get into just yet, but suffice it to say, it really rattles her. And then a shadow shows up and is basically like, how dare you besmirch our Lord's good name. He only works to make all of your lives happy, which is a very interesting turn of phrase, and it's very different than anything that any shadows in the other places so far, and even in the original after this, have and will say. And along the way, she, you know, like, again, she's having these anxieties from, like, fucking these people just like, oh, well, she's just not living up to our expectations. Guess we gotta ditch this one, which eventually rattles her enough to get her to hear.
It's all in your best interest. Filling my life with this pressure. Demanding the results that you want. Yoshizawa? Could she be? And now you're all branding me a failure? Let me remind you who you're talking to. I am...
Laura Post
Kasumi Yoshizawa!
fucking kills it.
So adamant. Rather than accept life in cinders, you'd strive towards splendor. You know the risks. Well, if those really are the shoes you've chosen,
The aesthetic of Cinderella
then we'll dance to the end.
as not a famous trickster, but the girl who's been chosen to come to the ball is such a perfect fit for this character. And I appreciate that her place in the story in that manner reflects that. I think that that is such a wonderful aesthetic to pick for her. Also, she has like a literal magical transformation. Apparently, this is Laura Post's second one of those in her career. I forget what the other one is, but yeah.
Look at that!
So along comes Kasumi, who unfortunately completely steals the show from Haru's month.
I request we have a rematch. This time, I'm going all in with Cendrillon!
Cendrillon is the, I believe, the French pronunciation of Cinderella. I believe that's it. So yeah, she enters into a contract with Cendrillon, which leads to basically which leads to, you know, them kicking the shit out of the Shadow, her getting the skinny on everything, and declining the invitation to join the Phantom Thieves because I've neglected to mention it in the Akechi scene earlier, but she has mixed feelings about the thieves and what they're doing. So yeah, Akechi and her know each other, because their fathers work at the same, her father works at the same TV station that Akechi is always, like, showing up on, so they've kind of met up before the plot starts because of that. So yeah, Kasumi has a really great awakening and a really great start to her kind of place in starting to take a place in the story, but she declines the offer to join for reasons. Hilariously, I was actually told before the game came out, this is one of the only things that slipped to me before the game came out that I really wish someone hadn't told me, but they did. It's one of the only parts of the game I was told that she was on the team from Casino onwards, but that she wasn't coming to Palaces because she was a rookie, and those are big challenges for her to face as her first attempt, right? This is actually entirely untrue. This was someone who doesn't speak Japanese who was telling me these things. She is very capable of going. She just doesn't want to yet. And when it comes to... That is accurate for the original Last Palace, but... yeah. Hilariously, I was under the impression that she would be joining the team in Mementos from Casino onwards, so that you could at least mess around with her. This was not true, but it's still okay. I don't mind. It would have been nice if she could have at least been in Mementos until then, but, you know, can't change it. I'm still really happy with her role in the game. Let me get another drink. I have a quick thing written down for Shinya, so let's talk about Shinya real quick. Again, there's not a whole lot I want to say, but... So you meet up with this pro gamer that takes on this tiny gamer. He takes on this, like, yeah, I'm the king persona, and, like, gosh, I realize I don't have that much to say about him. He's a fun kid. He learns, like, hey, I shouldn't be, like, I need to... His whole thing is, I want to be strong because my mom taught me to be strong, and I have to be strong so that people don't walk over me. And he ends up becoming a bully, accidentally, and he sort of grows and learns to not be a bully. But he teaches you some really slick gun moves, so that makes him really invaluable. He has a good arc. There's not a whole lot to say there, but, you know, it's good stuff. Why did my phone lock on me? Alright. So next up is Maruki's social link topic closed. What do I mean by that? I mean, I'm going to talk about the fact that his social link will now... I'm basically going to talk about the rest of his social link in its entirety. So let's quickly... So Maruki, the first 5 links he has is basic. It's pretty basic stuff. It's like, hey kid, I really need help with this research paper, and I want to try and learn... I want to learn how to make people happy. I want to try and find a way to reduce trauma in patients, which is a really noble thing for him to want, you know? Which one am I looking for? Oh, there he is.
You know, as I was saying...
What?
What?
Jesus
How
Christ.
foolish.
So, we arrive. Yeah, that's a good angle. So, Maruki has been trying to complete this research paper. He wants to find a way to reduce trauma in patients through the use of cognition, which is a really noble goal, and you start to get the inkling that there are some things going on there. But one thing is very clear throughout his link, and that is that he is a genuinely, perhaps bafflingly good person compared to the rest of that cast. In a game where so much of the adult cast, with the exception of the S-Links, is just a bunch of assholes. They're such bad people. We have this guy who seems just like a good person. And while there's an initial feeling in most players, I would say, that there is a facade to that, and that there might be something more going on. While that does ultimately turn out to be true, I think most people will find themselves forgetting that because he's so likable and interesting. And hilariously, without getting ahead of myself, because this is part 3 coming out of me right now, he is everything he says he is. Or, no, he doesn't say he's a good person. He's everything he acts like. He is a genuinely good person. Perhaps to an unbelievable degree. There is so little back down on Maruki being a good person in this game that it scares me. But we'll get into that in part 3. But really, the main thing about his S-Link is that you go through it and you start to realize that, oh, this whole thing of like, oh, he wants to kind of cure trauma patients of their trauma is cognitive therapy. He wants to straight up remove things from people's brains that will allow them to be happy and become their ultimate person. It will allow them to live their life without strife and be happy. He is so convinced of like, no, I can make everyone's life better. Like, genuinely. Wouldn't it be great if we could just take, like, the ways that people live and extrapolate some of the parts that they don't like about themselves and help them get past that so they can become an even better version of themselves. It's a very interesting philosophy. It's not hidden behind anything. It's very much what you see is what you get. I want people to live better lives. So can we use this thing? It's not... I think it's a little over halfway through his link before he makes the connection that the Phantom Thieves are clearly doing something with cognition that... Oh. Let me check the stream real quick. It freaked out a second. Make sure I'm still going. Do a sound check. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm a little nervous, because fucking YouTube streaming gets weird on me sometimes. Still better than Twitch, because Twitch will just lose my footage sometimes, and I'm... whatever. I'm not playing that game anymore. And... You go through... He makes the connection to the Phantom Thieves, and you start realizing that there's something going on. You eventually meet up with him in a restaurant, a fancy restaurant, and you meet up with a college buddy of his who's like, hey, let me look over your research notes from that paper. Like, I can give this a look. And that character will show up a little later. I believe his name is Shibusawa. Throughout the main story, not regarding his link, every member of the cast meets him in some way, shape, or form, with the exception of, like, Akechi. But he does seem to know Akechi. And they all meet up with him and they talk to him a little bit about what they really want out of life. And that ends up going to some interesting places a little later on. Even Yusuke, who I think is very interesting, happens last because he doesn't go to that school, so the first time that they can justify story-wise why he would ever go there is at the school festival in Casino Arc, which I haven't even gotten to yet, but it's interesting how they wait that long just to make it feel natural that Yusuke would go talk to him, which is something I really appreciate, because getting every single member of the cast to go meet him when not all of them goes to the school, it's a rough idea script-wise to try and justify, and they do it really well. He meets Futaba because he goes to the cafe because it's a cafe. He just goes. He hears it's got good coffee, so he heads over there, like anybody else would. It feels very natural the way that he's integrated into the story. But you know, you go through his link. I'm gonna get ahead of myself just a little bit so we can wrap up Maruki here and then not talk about him until the last part. But you go through his link and you get to his last day at the school on, I believe, November 17th or 18th. And assuming you've done his entire link up to this point, he asks to speak to you specifically and thanks you for helping him with his paper, and reveals, hey, I know you're a Phantom Thief. How does he know that you're a Phantom Thief, you may ask? In one of the coolest pieces of we totally put something in a cutscene that you've seen before but you missed it, that I've seen in a long time. In the scene with On and Ryuji and Ren coming out of Kamoshida's palace for the first time after her awakening, if you look in the background, Maruki is literally walking down the staircase and past them. And he totally saw them materialize. He totally just sees you guys snap out of thin air. And it's so subtle. I've gone back and watched that scene. He is totally there now. And again, he probably was always there in the original. It's just these are the things that I like about how these things play out, is that these are story elements that always happened. We just didn't see them before, right? Like they always existed. We just didn't see them. And it's so subtle how he walks by the camera in that scene. I think the way that they do it is very clever, is that they put him in one of his later game costumes where he's in like a brown jacket as opposed to this one, the white one that he's generally seen in. So you're not looking for... It's funny, like, I think it's hilarious how hard I missed this the first time. Like, I completely missed that he's in that scene, but I immediately went and looked, and yes, he's totally there. And he reveals, like, hey, thanks for helping me with the paper. I know you're the leader of the Phantom Thieves. I'm not going to out you, because I think you're doing good things. And I hope we meet again someday. And he says a quick thing, which is something to the effect of, I hope you can forgive me. Which is very interesting, isn't it? Without getting too deep into Part 3 stuff, Maruki is genuinely a good person. And the game never backs down on this. And I think that is perhaps the thing about him that I like the most, is how wildly different he is to a lot of the rest of the game's cast. And I'll leave it there for now. What's next on the list? Let's see. I put my fucking phone's code in, I know. I thought I set my phone to be good on that. Haru's dad! Haru's dad. Haru's dad. How do I feel about Haru's dad? He's good. If you were hoping I'd say something a little more elaborate, I mean, I will elaborate. So Haru's dad is interesting in that he threatens to just be another villain of the week, but he has to exist in the span of the story because something very big and very important has to happen at the end of this arc. Something that I think is seeded fairly well. I've seen some people imply that, like, they give this reveal away early, and I don't agree with that for a couple reasons. One, here's the thing. When the topic of manslaughter comes out of the detective's mouth in the first, like, hour of the game. That is, first off, that's like 80 hours before this point. Most people, at least on their first playthrough, have forgotten that. Right? Like, that's so long ago, and there's so many things happening at that point in the game that you're trying to process that most people don't catch it anyway, so I don't really, like, mind that. I think it's intentionally... Oh, hold on. I think it's intentionally, like, obfuscated by being hidden amongst a bunch of other information. But Nijima does come close to reminding you about it. They say, hey, we need you to be very careful about this case. Tell me what happened. What the fuck? What the fuck, bro? Right? And you get that, yeah. And you get that information. But again, I think they don't tell you exactly what the deal is. And since you don't know Casino is the next one, you can end up, like... it's really clever how they don't tell you when Casino is going to happen, so you're constantly going, is it this month? Is it this month? Is it this month? You're trying to count the amount of days that the clock flips forward every time that you do a flash forward to it. And it's interesting. I think they obfuscate it just enough to where you'll forget that Haru's dad obviously has something different that's going to happen to him. And that something different is when you get to that point where, like, Black Mask just fucking ganks him. It's a big shock. To me, at least. Again, like, I understand why some people could figure it out, because the hints are certainly there. But I think most people will have forgotten by the time they hit that point. So that's kind of where I sit on that. His place in the story is very important because of that. Like, he very much has to happen the way he does. Otherwise, elements of the story that are coming up will not play out the same way. How do I think of him as a villain? I think he's good. I think they added a couple extra bits to him in the anime that helped, but none of that made it back here, so I don't really know if I can count that. Stuff with showing him, like, when he started out his career and when he just genuinely cared about making people feel happy about food and stuff like that. And all that stuff's really nice. But, you know, I think he's a good villain. I don't think he matches up to some of the other ones. Certainly not even the three that are coming up after that. But yeah, I think he's alright. I think there's certainly worse characters in the game. Why is my smart lock not working on my phone right now? Anyways. Next up, very quickly, we'll talk about Mishima. So Mishima, I don't have a lot to say about Mishima other than his overall personality grates on people, and I agree, grates on me too. But he has one of my favorite resolutions in the game, which is going to his heart to steal his heart and like, hey, dude, we're gonna steal your heart. And then his shadow knows that he's going to have his heart stolen, and instead of stealing it, you just go, you know what? Fix it yourself. And you don't steal it. You just leave. Dude, that's one of my favorite resolutions in the whole game. Because that's something that needed to be in the game with someone. The idea of going to do the thing, but not doing it, and just letting them figure out their problems on their own. God, that's so good. Like, that sort of thing needed to happen in the game at least once. And it's just such a great moment. And that's kind of where I come down on Mishima, is he has a great moment. 1 second. Why is my phone not unlocking properly? Oh well. I'll just put the thing in every now and then. I also put down Sojiro. So Sojiro, obviously Coffee Dad has a wonderful character arc. You deal with stuff with Futaba's uncle. Honestly, it's funny how well Futaba and Sojiro's like stories dovetail into each other, that it almost feels like two S-links that are about the same people. It's funny. It builds them both up simultaneously, which is is a very interesting choice that I really appreciate. Well, although Dojima's in Persona 4 Golden, I wouldn't quite say it's this to the same degree. Nanako's definitely deals with Dojima, and Dojima definitely deals with Nanako. Like, they both deal with each other, but it's not to the same degree. Like, it's close, don't get me wrong, but it's not, like... There's a lot more focus on it here, I guess is the best way to put it. And, yeah, so Sojo is awesome. Again, not a whole lot to say there. Why the fuck is my phone being a bitch right now? Palace additions to the Spaceport. So I'm probably in the minority on this, but I think the Spaceport's great now. I cannot express how happy I am to go through a version of that doesn't make me want to tear my hair out. So basically what they've done is they've taken every area in that palace didn't even have like a bad gimmick. Like, they all had really nice, fun gimmicks that I thought worked really well for the palace and built it out in some really fun ways. But God, it was so long and drawn out, and like every area was like, God, they felt so much longer than they needed to be. And basically what they did is they took each of those areas and they shortened the hell out of them. They basically cut them in half. The first area in the palace that has like, hey, go figure out who the boss of this area is. And you have to like pick up information from different characters in this giant winding series of hallways. And like, I'm lying down now because I'm getting tired just thinking about it. Like, you spend so long in these hallways, and it's so long and drawn out, and it's awful. And here, they basically reduced it to like a very tiny set of corridors. That's basically, the best way I can drill this palace down on what they did to it is they basically pulled out the fat, and they reduced it to just the gimmicks that were interesting and fun. And now, a palace that used to feel 10 hours long when it was really only like 4 feels 2 hours shorter. Like, feels 2 hours shorter. Like, I was blown away. I know I generally spent like kind of the same amount of time in the palace as I did the first time, but it felt like I'd saved like 3 hours of my life when I finished it this time. And maybe that's not enough for a lot of people, but for me, like, God, I was so floored how well that worked out for me. So yeah, good shit. Good shit. I'm really happy with that palace now. Boss, expanded boss, better or worse is what I've written down. Some people think that Okumura is a worse fight now. Here's the thing about that. The fight kinda hasn't changed. And I don't mean that in a, oh, they didn't really do anything to it. No, they actually did something big to it. They adjusted the way it works, and they gave the fight more time to compensate by that. You have an extra 10 minutes longer than you did. You used to have 20 minutes, now you have 30. So what they've done is they've basically tweaked the boss. Tetrakarn and Makarakarn on your protagonist and on Haru are still enormously important to the fight, just like they used to be. But now they've added an extra wrinkle, which is that you have to defeat the servant bots simultaneously. This has tripped a lot of people up, but I still got through the boss on my first attempt with 3 minutes to spare, while I was woefully unprepared for the fight. Like, I came in without a lot of the shit that I now know I will never come in without again. But I still pulled out of the fight, because, like, I just, you know, I went for it and I got through it. I was on normal, by the way. I also think I was a little underleveled, but, you know, I still got through it. So, the deal with it now is you have to kill the robots at the same time. All this actually requires is that you've decked out your protagonist with multi-target, I believe, Garu, Zio, and Psychokinetic There might be one other in there too. I think Ice, but you can really kind of get through that with Yusuke if you do. Basically, all it really takes is the party member that uses that spell. So Psychokinetic for Haru as an example. Same thing on the protagonist, and then the other two party members are there for buffing and debuffing. That's basically it. That's the whole fight. It's not that complicated, but a lot of people are tripping up on the whole you have to take them out at the same time thing now. Honestly, I think it makes the fight more interesting, and I like that more. Some people, this is a personal thing that people disliked about the original fight is, oh, you don't even fight him. He just uses dudes. Well, he's just a bunch of ads. Whatever. I completely disagree with that. That's one of my favorite tropes, is the shitty boss who can't do anything on his own. He just throws his dudes at you. It's one of my favorite tropes, and it fits him so well as a dude who sits at the top and never has to deal with anything. And then you hit him once and he dies. That joke is so good, and I love it whenever I see it, and that's why he was always one of my favorite bosses by implementation to begin with. And now it's just more about his guys. They did add one more thing, which is a Robo Haru, who just follows him around and goes, "My father's word is absolute. He's never wrong." And it's good that that's there, because it always felt very strange to me that he would never seem to acknowledge his daughter in his brain at all before. That was always super weird to me, that she never even appeared in a small subservient role, which seemed to be how he kind of thought of her. So yeah, generally I do think that fight is better. I had more fun with it, and I don't think it's anywhere near as difficult as people seem to believe. Because really, the funny thing, the thing that I think is still funny about it is that unlike the other bosses that have changed, the strategy for him ultimately has not changed at all. You bring out multi-target spells, you bring Tetrakarn and Makarakarn. That's kind of it. So yeah, that's where I come down on that. Whew! One more arc to talk about. And then we will take a break, because I am starting to get a little bit under the weather. Before I continue talking, I am going to grab something from my throat, because it is starting to flare up a little. In the meantime, I will throw on something in the background to make this a little more bearable. Alright. I'll be back shortly. Just gonna go get something to spruce up my throat a little bit. Okay. Oh. So, we now arrive at Casino. The one that the game has been building up to since the very start of the game. And yet, not the last. So... trying to think of what else would supplement this month visually. Oh, you know it would really, you know it really would actually. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, my phone is really annoying me. Is there anything in here I'm forgetting? Yeah, actually, there is another spot that would be good to have on here. Anything I'm forgetting? Actually, shit. You really can't go on the... That's unfortunate. That would have been a really good one to have in there. Oh well. So, I have it written down in my notes. I have exactly... I will read this exactly as I've written it down. Why Casino Arc is the tits. Because it's fucking fantastic. Coming off of easily the game's lowest points to one of its absolute peaks is no small feat, but boy does it make it worth it. Hilariously, even though since Kasumi's whole thing like really outshines that last arc, and it only becomes even more present throughout this. So what's the deal with this arc? So this is the arc that the game has been leading up to, so there's a lot of expectations going into it. It's also the arc where Akechi finally shows his hand and reveals his game plan in more ways than one. Quite a few ways, actually. His new S-Link, which we will get into, do not worry, I have something written down about his rank 8 for a little later, because holy shit, there's stuff to talk about with his rank 8. He sends out his ultimatum to the team, hey, I know who you are, let's team up and bring down Makoto's sister, because, well, because fucking, it's becoming a problem. She's clearly becoming distorted, and there's not a lot we can do to stop that right now. So yeah. This arc does a whole lot of things right. It's the moment I think I realized how much I loved this game the first time. And it's so good, in fact, that I was able to forgive the actual original ending kind of letting me down in certain ways that I feel like Royal has finally fixed. What's a good way to supplement what I'm saying? Yeah. So, of course, we enter the palace, and we realize that her keywords are, of course, casino. And...
head right past there and keep a low profile.
That's it, huh? What's going on here?
We are looking at the courthouse, aren't we?
Seems like it.
Let's go. Right.
So I make it to casino, and Akechi reveals that, of course, he has had this power for a long time. He's hoping I don't switch to the bad one first. There we go. He reveals his... I guess some people don't like this costume. I think it's hilarious and wonderful because it is... I mean, listen, we're gonna get into spoilers. We're getting into spoilers here. It is a... It's literally him forcing a reflection of what he believes a true hero to be. For fuck's sakes. Oh, by the way, I've always also appreciated the detail that he has the same run animation as the protagonist. That always really made me happy. The fact that his persona, which is, by the way, not even his real persona, it's a fake. It's a literal fake persona he drove out of his own personality, is... I mean, it's fucking Superman. Look at it. It's got a fucking... It's got... Can't even get a really good angle on it. But, if I'm not mistaken, the Robin Hood on the chest, like it's the Superman logo. Like, it's what it is. Like, it's... He thinks of himself as the perfect hero detective. For fuck's sakes. If I run over here... Not there either. My sole interest is to discover the truth. Is uncovering the truth. It's such a good splash screen, and that mask is all about him being like super in control of the situation at all times. Really hope that I don't hit the next one too early, but we'll see what happens. Ah, that's fine. There. But yeah, he, like, you know, his whole deal. It's funny. We'll get into a little later, like, why this character has gone through such a weird, like, road over the last 3 years. But for now, I'll just say, like, I wasn't the biggest fan of this character at first, and I liked him a lot less when I saw how his story ended. But I liked him more later, and now I fucking love him. He's probably one of my favorite characters in the game, actually. But yeah, again, that's getting ahead of myself. So, to shift gears for a little bit, Kasumi has chosen to not join the team, but she's still being friends with the protagonist. Interestingly, like, there's a small moment, actually doesn't happen until later, where they bring up that she doesn't believe that they killed Okumura, right? But it does come up. It's very brief, though. But Kasumi has... Gosh, this is one of my favorite scenes in the whole game. Kasumi, during the school festival... okay. In the original game, there was a date event that could happen at the school festival where you would go up and they would say, and that was the wonderful dance team! And this is a situation where you show up with her earlier, and the dance team dances. And it's like, oh my god, that was always there in the original. It fits in so perfectly, as if it was always there. Again, that's what I like about these things. These are events that always happened, we just didn't see them. And then you get to Kasumi's dance, which is probably one of my favorite scenes in the game now. Where the school for the whole game has just been like, fuck this bitch. God, such a prissy honor student, whatever. Get out of my face. And then she just goes out in front of all of them, shows her stuff, and they're all mesmerized.
Huh? Yo, who's that? Huh?
Sorry about that. God, what a wonderful scene. That's probably the last Kasumi scene I'll be able to show because the third semester stuff is all blocked. So I will be giving no visual aids once I get to talking about that. But yeah, that's a little later still. So, yeah, that is a wonderful scene. Just after she has kind of figured out who she is and what she wants to be, you get a sense of like, you know, whatever. I'm not going to let them rule me anymore. And it's such a wonderful sequence. Yeah, it's really good. So, now let's talk about Sai, and why she's a way better villain for Makoto than, even though it's funny, the month is simultaneously Makoto's month, and, it's simultaneously Makoto's month and Akechi's month. Which is hilarious because Makoto, it's like a tacit admission by the game that Kaneshiro is not a good villain for Makoto. And he really doesn't supplement her arc all that well. And even though her arc in that month is really good, boy is it in spite of him, because he is not doing her any favors as just being kind of a generic mobster. And then you get to her sister. Forget the outfit for a minute, even though there's a lot to talk about there, holy shit. Like, oh yeah, and of course that. A design that, hilariously, I didn't really get what they were going for the first time until, like, you know, I examined it a little better, and like, okay, now I get what they're going for there. She, as the kind of master of this casino and Makoto's ultimate foil, is super interesting. And the way that she openly presents herself to you throughout the palace is so neat. She's not hiding behind anything, she's constantly showing her face. Like, yeah, well, whatever. There's a ton of bits of Akechi, like, kind of showing his genius throughout. The bit with the card, the point totals at the end, is super fun. It's just such a great... Makoto... Sai is a great foil for the cast, and it really shows off, like, how far the story's come, and seeing a character that you've literally seen since the first hour of the game in that light is super interesting, and they do a really, really good job with that. Let's see. Okay. I've written down Akechi's ultimatum / his rank 8. So let's talk. So, I kind of already laid out his ultimatum, which was when he presents to the team, like, hey, join me or we're going to have problems, and disband when we're done. Throughout the game, in Royal, they have added his S-Link, which has done an enormous amount of good for him as a character. It helps you get to know him a little better, and it helps you understand parts of him. It's going to be on screen again. Okay, so it helps you get a better feel of like what he's about, even though a lot of what he is ultimately fabrication, right? He is almost entirely a person he has built out to show to the public, and specifically you, the protagonist. He is absolutely interested in nothing more than ganking motherfuckers. But there's more to him than just that, which I think has become very clear throughout Royal. And it's never been more clear than in his rank 8. His rank 8 is his last real rank, because the 9 and 10 are via the story stuff that happens afterwards. His rank 8 is voiced, fully voiced. You meet up with him, and he wants something. He wants a duel. He wants to fight the protagonist before the stuff that happens later. And if you don't do it before then you won't see all the good stuff in the new semester. He wants to know who would win in a straight fight, because he's not planning on having a straight fight later. So he's like, you know what? We're just going to do this now. Obviously, he doesn't tell you that, because he's planning something. But, like, and even though at this point the protagonist most definitely has figured it out, Ren knows. it's still very interesting to see him kind of lose his facade a little bit and be like, you know what? Who would win in a straight fight? Let's go. One-on-one, right now. And you beat him. Hilariously, if you lose, he'll just be like, yeah, okay, come back when you're good. When you beat him, for the first time in the entire story, and this is the moment that I was like, okay, let me walk you through my relationship with this character for a second. The first time I played this game, I liked him to an extent before the big reveal, and I thought he was really cool at the reveal, and I thought, oh man, wait, I really like this guy now. And then, without getting ahead of myself, his arc just sort of stops. He sort of just goes away before he's actually finished his character arc. And it feels like he's only like 1 or 2 scenes away from finishing it, is the worst part. It straight up feels like... It feels like he's supposed to jump out of like a corner in the fight that follows his big fight, and then die not heroically, die vindictively would be a better way to put it. Like a last moment of spite, if anything, which would have been fucking awesome, but it doesn't happen. So he just, I mean, if you're here, you probably know what happens, but I'm still gonna wait until the next time. It's not good. No matter what you think of this character before or after Royal, that's a shitty way for any character to just drop out of the story before... A character that is so vital and important to the entire story structure to just disappear sucks, no matter how you split it. So, getting to his rank 8 and seeing more of who he is before that point is really interesting. And his rank 8, after you beat him, it's one of my favorite fucking things in the game now, and it's the moment I went, like, from... Yeah, I'm casually, like, I casually like this guy, to, oh my fucking god, he's one of my favorite rival characters of all time. Is when he drops the facade completely. And for the first time in the whole game, and I love that it's voiced, he is 1000% honest with Ren. He looks at the protagonist and he is not lying in the slightest, and he goes, I hate you. I fucking hate you so much! You are infuriating! You always know what to say! It freaks me out! And I hate that everything you have to say drives me up a wall! You're always so sure of yourself, you've got these wonderful friends who are always there for you, it infuriates me! So I'm gonna throw you my glove! And that, because he explains like the whole thing in Western culture, like you throw someone your glove. It's very old-fashioned, but you know it's what he knows. He throws the glove. This means I am challenging you to a duel. Who will win? You accept the glove, and as long as you pick the second option in bed on the night of securing the route to cruise ship, you will get a little more to his storyline, and you will get to complete it. But him breaking the facade and being super honest with you for the first time in the game before the penny drops is so fucking good. And I think the thing that makes it so good is the fact that it's very clear that the protagonist already knew and was very aware, so they are both 1000% in complete understanding of what is going on and why they both know exactly who each other is at that point in the story, and it's fucking great. By the way, I forgot to mention in regards to the Superman analogy, but like the fucking A on his chest, or on his belt rather, yeah, that's again, it's all part of his facade. It's wonderful. So yeah, that brings Akechi from, yeah, I enjoy him, he's good, to, wow, I fucking adore this character. So fucking good. Royal does him so well. Oh my god. Man, I'm gonna get into a lot in part 3, but the willingness of a group of writers to look at a piece of work that they had already put out and look at it without, like, and to be able to look at something that you did, and even though you have pride in it, and your company has pride in it, to be able to look at the parts of it that didn't work, and go, okay, this can be better. What can we do about that? Now, admittedly, I wish this extended to certain parts, like the thing with Morgana and Ryuji, but I guess I can't have everything. But still, I would rather have this and everything that they did add than that if I had to choose. I would rather have it all, genuinely. But at the same time, you know. Oh, people have been in the chat. Sorry about that, guys. I actually need to read through that now. 1 second. So much satisfaction I got the bullet in the back of the head for my life. Come on. Yeah. Nice contract to Joker's costume. Primarily Glenn Rock. Whole scene makes me wish P5D came out. Yeah, I really wish P5D came out later. Yeah. Because, like, I think we'll still get that, because I happen to think that we're going to get a dancing game that's all 3 of the casts and mashup tracks. But yeah. Smash Brothers reference when you interact with the sign in the battle arena. Oh, the Super Bash Brothers thing? Yeah. Yeah. That line is always hilarious, because I remember seeing John Reisenbach on Twitter talking about, yeah, I added that line on a whim. But yeah. God. There's so much good shit here. Okay. What was next on the list? Put my fucking password again. Small palace changes. Yeah, so Casino didn't have too many big changes, which is fine because it was always one of my favorite palaces, so like I didn't really mind that. Casino has... There's one big one that I appreciate. A lot of the changes in Casino were small, granular things that are like, hey, we made this a little easier to understand. One that I really appreciate is when you start the dice game. In the original game, you had to play dice like 10 times, I think, before it would let you, before someone would pull you aside and be like, yeah, we can't win, and then you'd be allowed to progress. Now, you're just allowed to go into the vent immediately. Like, and then someone will just be like, yeah, the game was rigged, yeah, we figured it out. Which is really, God, I really appreciate that. It's a lot of just general stuff that's tightening. They added one thing that I appreciate that I'll probably not use too much, because I tend to go through every area for the experience and, you know, getting all the red off of the map. But they added a shortcut in the area after the dice game, where you can basically fight 2 high-level enemies, and you skip the whole area. It's a nice little shortcut that I really appreciate. But really the big thing they changed is the boss fight, which I definitely prefer the new change, because I think it makes the fight a little more interesting. And it's funny, because they keep the old gimmick in the first part of the fight. Originally, the fight... Let me see, because now I'm just talking about the... Yeah, that's... Okay, that was next on my list anyways. So after that, it's the boss, and the boss, Leviathan, is... So originally the boss was a game of random chance, where you had this wheel that would spin, and it's still there, it's still in the first phase of the fight, but they used to be there the whole way. Now they've changed it to elemental weaknesses. And, God, I just think that's a really fun change, because I think there's a problem that I have in original P5 that they've done a lot less of in this one, where you will have fights that, like... What's the strategy? Okay, pull Ryuji or Yusuke out, buff them physical attacks until the boss is done. And I think the use of physical attacks is a lot of fun, but the amount of bosses that they've added, no, here's the elemental phase, to really makes me happy, because it's so much incentive to switch characters mid-fight, even characters that aren't good at physical stuff. Like, oh, here's the fucking psychokinetic phase. Pull out Haru. Oh, nuclear? Oh, get Makoto. Stuff like that. Like, where you're playing with the whole cast and they all feel valuable and they all feel like they matter, right? I think the fight lasts a little longer than it used to because of that phase, but I'm okay with that because it means that I'm getting to play around with the cast more. Something that I really appreciate is that Akechi's moveset is different in Endgame. He's got a way more useful moveset in Endgame, new Endgame, than he does in Casino. Because Casino, they dole out light and dark to him. And they dole out, I think, one physical attack, one almighty, and 1 or 2 buffs, but generally, like, he's kind of okay. He's light and dark now, you know, and that's his thing, and that's cool. I like that, but I like that they split that up between Kasumi and Akechi towards later. But again, like the way that the fight now is like all elements. Yeah, I think that's a really neat change, and I like the more of the game that uses elements, the better. Okay. Next up on my list is True Culprit. You know where this is going. So let's go. What's a good thing for this? Is there anything particularly good for this? Not really. We'll leave that on for now. Whoops. So, we of course make it, and we beat the boss. I'm trying to remember which one of these this is. No, this is before. I was thinking it was the one after. That's fine. So we make it. We are captured. Well, get that off the screen just yet. As if you don't already know. So we have arrived back at the end media res that the game starts with. The game is getting back to the whole, like, its whole hook. You've been captured. There was a traitor. Everyone knows it's Akechi already. The player knows it. The player is like, oh my god, how can you fucking... yeah, this is true of Royal and in the original. Because the player is like, yeah, I fucking know it's him. Come on, you don't think I'm that stupid, do you? Of course it's him. Who the fuck else would it be? There's a quick... This is something I always appreciated. There's a quick scene in Casino Arc before you head to fight her sister, where they have Makoto say something to the effect of like, I won't let you down this time, sis, which almost feels like they're trying to set up, wait, was it Makoto all along? No, of course it's not Makoto, dumbass, but they try and almost hint at it to give you a last second doubt, like, maybe she doesn't want to betray her sister, so she's going to betray the team, something like that, you know? But of course not, that's not where this is going. But you're like, oh my god, of course it's Akechi. And you get here, and you're like, yeah, of course. Still, the scene's awesome. You're still like, whoa, wasn't expecting the cold, hard murder. That was pretty raw.
Have you finally pieced it all together?
And you're like, yeah, of course it's you, dumbass, we know. Everyone knew. You're not gonna shoot, though. Because that would make the rest of the plot very dicey. That would make the rest of the game very strange. If, like, you know, they're faking. I see. Every single person at that point losing their fucking mind. What do you fucking mean? What are you talking about? No, that's not real. The crazy thing is, even though you know in your heart, there's no way, right? What, are you gonna play the rest of the game as Ryuji? What, like, you know that something's amiss, but they play that out really hard. They show the gunshot, they show the blood on the table, like, even in your mind's eye, you're sitting there like, I can't justify how this happens. It doesn't make sense. We are fucking, like, we cut back to this. Oh, I see. For those that don't know, the anime ends on this shot. It's really bad. They have 2 OVAs after it that cover the last 2 arcs, of the original at least. But, technically the 26th episode ends on Akechi walking away as the credits play, as he just killed the protagonist, and as far as the show is aware, Jesus, get some indigestion. That's the end, which I always thought was hilarious. But yeah, you're sitting there like, how the fuck do you write your way out of this? How do you, like, everyone, and we're even cutting to our cast, like, and they have no idea what's going on. Or do they? And we're coming up
Can I get you to look over here?
on one of my favorite tropes ever, which is, which I kind of discovered through this game, honestly.
Sure was something.
Which is,
So the next shoot got me thinking.
I, the player, am not stupid. I figured out your dumb twist hours ago. Here's the thing. In Persona 4, I'm not gonna say what the deal with Persona 4 culprit is, because, you know, some people may want to go back after Royal. The deal with these games always bury the lead on who their traitor is, right? P3, absolutely, you can tell who the problem is. In P4, it's harder. There is a more obvious choice that, if you're not aware, was originally going to be the culprit, but they decided that would be way too obvious and changed it to someone else. And they switched it to someone that is far more interesting. But they, you know, like, they switch it to someone who's far more interesting, but if you're paying attention, especially in Golden makes it really obvious who they are, because they added an S-Link for them. And it's not even that their S-Link gives it away, it's that their Arcana gives it away, which I believe is, God, what is it? The Joker, the Trickster, something like that? Or it's like, gee, I wonder. Or you could definitely tell who the deal is in Royal. But, I could see that, yeah. Yeah, I could see wanting to see that, yeah. They didn't really change any of the anime scenes in this one, which is interesting because I don't mind that, actually. But, Catherine Fullbody actually changes the anime scenes, simply because there's so many of them, which is interesting. It's Hunger, yeah, and Hunger then becomes Jester, which is like, gee, I wonder what's going on there. But these games always bury the lead on, like, who's the fucking, like, what's the deal? What's the deal here? What's going on? And you get here, you can pretty much tell who it is. And then the game, well, I'll wait just another minute, because we're almost there.
We also received information that the young man was placed on probation for assault.
Because of his previous record, he had to leave his home.
By the way, I remember this fucking me up the first time, because I was like, wait, he's still in her life? It's like, oh yeah, her dad died before he could solve this problem. Oh no. Which gives you extra bad feelings if you don't finish her link, because then that means that canonically she does end up with him if you don't finish her S-Link. And that sucks, so you better do it.
We have breaking news. The young man being held in custody has committed suicide.
Oh!
Police have confirmed his death.
They let this thing sit with the player just long enough to where you start thinking, like, what if I am gonna play as Ryuji? Or like someone, anyone. If it was gonna be anyone, I feel like it would be Ryuji, just to be completely honest. Maybe Futaba, I could kind of see that. No, then you wouldn't be able to do anything. You'd be sitting in a fucking floating thing for the rest of the game. So we hit this moment, and you're like, wait, hold on, what? So, my favorite fucking trope is you've been building to this thing, the player thinks that they understand exactly what's going on. And you're almost like, oh my god, the fucking cast is so stupid, how do they not know? And you get there, and you realize the characters, your protagonists, are so much smarter than you, the player. They are smarter than you. And that is so fucking good. We get there, and some people have issues with this because they don't think all the bits make sense. To be completely honest, I've gone over this a lot. I don't think that's true. I think they hyper-explain it to a ridiculous degree, to the point where they even have an optional series of extra things to explain if you didn't get it. I have a quick thing in my notes that just says pancakes exclamation point. The fucking moment of pancake detective. It's funny. There are some people that catch that the first time. I didn't, because they put just enough degree of separation between the pancake line and when Morgana originally says pancakes that you're liable to miss it. And in fact, I've gone through the game with a couple people who totally miss it, and I'm sitting in that scene with them, and I'm sitting there like rubbing my hands together mentally, and I'm like, are they gonna catch it? Are they gonna catch it? Are they gonna? They didn't catch it. They didn't catch it. Ah! It's so good. And oh man. So yeah, pancakes being the crux of the plot, so fucking fantastic. My next note is Hideo Kojima's Ghostwrite, because my favorite thing about this point of the game is that they... My second to last note, which I will roll into this one, is I lose my mind every time. Hideo Kojima, they fucking, like, hey, how the fuck did this... How does all this make sense? How does this get here? Listen, I'm not going to go into every intricate detail of how it all works. The basic gist is they use a fake in Sai's heart in her world because the outer parts of Sai's heart are unfiltered and they're just the regular city, so it looks like the real world. They have to fake a bunch of extra circumstances that... The game stops for 45 minutes, like a Kojima game, to be like, okay, did you not get that? Alright, motherfucker, here we go. Here we go. We're gonna go until you get it. And if you don't get it, if you have more questions, go over there, because we have some text boxes that are gonna drop even more on you. Oh my god. Like, fuck, man. It's so well done. And I'm so happy. I lose my shit every time, and it's such a great reward after going through the Okumura arc again. Which, again, God, Kasumi just completely steals the show. It's a little embarrassing, actually. So yeah. Kasumi, I think I've covered a fairly good amount of things on her arc here. I've gotten to the core of why Casino is so fucking good. I actually did a couple things when I left a little while ago to make my throat a little better, but I still don't trust my throat to survive the next 3 arcs, because boy do I have a lot... My fucking notes for 3rd semester are enormous. They're so much bigger than everything else. Which is funny, because my notes for Shido and Yaldi aren't even that small either. How many fucking points do I have? How many fucking points do I have in the fucking 3rd semester? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's like somewhere around 20 points I want to hit. Jesus Christ. So yeah, I will be leaving this here for now. Part 3 will be later today. I'm gonna rest my voice so that I can do it. I'm going to go around probably 5. It's 3:30 now, so I'll rest my voice for an hour and a half. I will try not to talk, maybe 5:30, just to give myself a little more rest. But yeah, the part 3 will be later today, because I want to take advantage of today while the humidity isn't fucking me over like it did last time. So yeah, we're going to leave this here for now. And thank you very much for watching, Kyle and Red. And I believe there was one other person, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there we go. So, thank you very much for watching. I will be back in a few hours. We will be talking about the game's original ending. We will be talking about Shido, my thoughts on him as a villain. We will be talking about Yaldabaoth, all the things that I do like about that part of the game, and why I ultimately feel like it's a good but not great ending. Getting into the specifics of that, despite how many great things happen there, and why the final arc, which has been on the screen multiple times, but I'm still not going to say it, has reinvigorated my love of this game and given me the ending I always wanted it to have. So, thank you very much for watching. Here's hoping I don't feel my throat being a problem later. So, I will try to do my best and not talk until then, so that I can do that properly. Alright. Gosh, that was a lot. Thank you very much. Give in to temptation. Bye-bye for now.